guys. It's Brian, and welcome to the second episode of the Elevated Prospective Podcast, guys. Brought to you by the DailyDank.com, right here on the Daily Dank channel, guys. We're on all the podcast forums, on Spotify, iTunes. We're on all the things. So wherever you're listening to us at, I really, really appreciate it. We got a great show for you today, guys. I got to hang out with I want to make sure I get this right, with the PodOutAtNight host. Man, this was really great. If you guys have not checked out the PodOutAtNight podcast, guys, you got Graveyard in Salem. I was practicing in my head, and I was like, Grave Digger and Shadow. So I wanted to make sure you guys know me. It's Tony Smith, and I'm like, Eric Jabala. You know. So Graveyard in Salem, guys, they have a great podcast. They talk horror. They talk all things creepy, dark, good movies. They just talk, guys. It's a great time. I love it because they drop their podcast on YouTube a little late at night. Like it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm bucking around. You guys know, fucking around, and it drops, and I turn it on. I do my work, have it in the background. Great podcast, guys. I definitely recommend checking it out. We talk reimagining horror films, guys. We talk reimagining a new Nightmare on Elm Street. Not a new nightmare, even though it would be a new nightmare. How would you bring Freddy back? We talk about it. Copyright Daily Dank. If you could do one ultimate slasher horror movie, we talk Jack the Ripper, guys. How would you bring back Jack the Ripper in today's horror movie genre? We talk about it. We got it, guys. It was a great podcast, man. I definitely stick around, check it out, guys. You're going to have a great time with it. Before I leave you on that one, guys, check out the description below. If you guys are just happen to be shopping on Temu anyway, we are now an affiliate Temu sponsor person. So if you're gonna get anything from Temu, hit the link. It helps us out. It's the same exact thing that you would do. It helps us out, guys. We're gonna try to do one with Amazon too. That way, if you're just shopping, you're just buying, it throws a couple bucks our way, and it helps the channel out. All right, guys. So get into it, man. I'm excited about this one. This is the second episode of the Elevated Prospective Podcast, guys. Pod Out at Night. That's right. Check them out. You got Salem and Graveyard, guys. And, man, I'm telling you, it's a good podcast. Check it out. As soon as you see this, you're going to be like, where's their channel? Go show them some love, guys. And we'll be back. Oh, stick around. It's a good one. It's a long one. So stick around, guys. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, and...
There is a world. There is a world. And in that world, there are people. And those people know things you do not. Never fear. Brian Brown is here to get down to the dirty and gather knowledge from all walks of life to help us all grow and be better in this racket we call life. Now get those thinking caps on, because it's time to BS with BB.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Elevated Prospective Podcast, guys. We're back with a great one, and I'm super excited, guys, and so should you be. We're talking horror. You know, yes. We love all things horror here. We do November to Dismember. We do a whole month of a horror icon tournament on the channel. We do a slasher. We love our horror movies, so this is going to be great, guys. And we got an expert to join us. We're going to get down to the dirty. We're going to talk all things murder, mayhem, and mystery. Please give it up, guys, for Graveyard. How you doing, sir?
Good. How about you?
Oh, doing great. Before we'll plug it at the end too, but tell us about the podcast real quick before we get too deep into the horror conversation.
Yeah, so it kind of started with my co-host and I, Salem. He had this idea that we work together professionally in our day-to-day jobs for about 7 years now, and we talked about horror movies every single day at work.
Nice.
So
nice.
we go, we watch a lot of horror movies, and it's kind of our lives at this point in time. So we should be recording ourselves. So about a year and a half-ish ago, we started the podcast. They mostly pod out at night, mostly. And within the first year, we got picked up by Comic-Con Radio and who host podcasts. And we actually started writing horror articles for them as well. So it's been a great ride. I've been introduced to lots of awesome podcasters along the way, especially, you and who I'm also on Distance Stirring, where we interview independent comic book creators, stuff like that. But we like to gear towards the horror side. So last year, between all the stuff I did about 300 shows.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Watched about 350 horror movies just for the podcast.
The podcast?
Yeah, just for the podcast. And so October of last year, I go, you know what? I want to start talking to independent creators and other people in the horror world. So whether you're a production assistant, production designer, stuff like that, I love talking to people because I love learning behind the scenes of how some of my favorite stuff happens to get made.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a great idea. So a little bit about me real quick, and my audience is like, oh, not this crap again. No. So I'm a filmmaker. I went to film school, got into it a little later in life, but it was always my dream. And then when COVID hit, I kind of had to pivot a little bit, and I started getting into the YouTube stuff, doing marketing, and but yeah, horror movies and just film in general has always been my passion. And I remember I did I forget the guy's name, class. Ev is like the film genius guy, and he would go around tour. But he would always say the easiest thing to do is stick 7 kids in a room and scare the crap out of them and film it. And there's your horror movie. And I mean, it's simplistic, but I mean, as long as you follow the template, man, like it really can flow. And you like a lot of good filmmakers get their footprint, in that first horror. I could just name them off.
Right.
Yeah. What are some of your your first inspirations of horror movies? Like when you were a kid, did you do I remember my cousin brought over a Fangoria magazine. He was a few years older than me. I'm going way back, like early 80s. But yeah, and just looking at him, and you're just like, oh my God, because, you had HBO, but beyond that, that was it.
Right.
So you could see these things, and that's what opened my mind to it. What was it for you?
I remember being a small lad and being deathly afraid of the movie Jaws in the 80s.
Yes.
Like, it scared the crap out of me. So much to the point that if I heard the music, I would start crying because it's terrifying. And having almost drowned a couple times in my life, water and me being underwater doesn't really go hand in hand. But I remember going to about 6 years old to Universal Studios in Florida in 1990, and we were on the Jaws ride. And of course, Bruce, the shark, popped up right in my side. Scared the crap out of me. But that kind of gave me a turning point. I have 2 older siblings, and they're 4 and 8 years older than me. So when they became teenagers, they started watching horror movies and everything like that. And I remember seeing Child's Play in probably 1989 at 4 or 5 years old, going, "This isn't scary. This is great." And my older sisters being scared, crapless, like that. To me, that really hooked me in. And then really the Sci-Fi Channel and stuff like that, because they always had the comedy horror. I remember. Everyone knows the movie now, but watching a movie is like, oh, there's clowns that go around turning people into cotton candy or popcorn. And this is pre-internet, so you don't really know what this movie is. Like, okay, didn't have a TV guide. Like, maybe I'll catch it at some point in time. And so between that and then probably 93-ish, seeing a guy always after Mystery Science Theater 3000, the first movie always on, was a guy who was missing a hand being walked in a stockade through the desert with Eric the Red in Old England. So introduction to Evil Dead.
Yeah.
With Army of Darkness right there.
Yeah. Oh man, it's funny you were saying like the movies that get introduced to as a kid. You maybe don't see the whole movie,
Hmm.
just bits and pieces. We just did the review yesterday. For me, it was the original April Fool's Day. Or
Hmm.
the 80, I think 82, 86, maybe 80, the 86 it was because I was 10. And I
Hmm.
just remember the poster, how iconic it was. It was the typical party kids at the table, and then the girl with her hair knotted in a
Yep.
noose, and then she had the knife behind her. And as a 10-year-old, you're like, I need to see this. Oh my god, like what is it? And and at 10, at that age, there's no way you're seeing that movie.
Right.
Yeah, like, yeah, there's until maybe HBO or VHS later
Hmm.
on. But yeah, I think it's just the excitement and like the adrenaline and like the mystery. It's almost
Hmm.
like you're stepping into the unknown.
Oh
Like you're
yeah.
you're part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and growing up, our because born in the 80s, so I remember VHSs and the war between
Yeah.
beta and VHS. But our movie rental place had a separate section for horror movies. It was own
Oh,
separate
nice.
area. And when I was a small kid, you didn't think, oh, there's this whole separate area, and it wasn't obviously for porn, but it was for horror movies, and
Yeah.
you were not allowed to be under 17 and allowed in that section. And to me, that was mind-boggling. So my parents were very strict to adhering to that. So when I would go to my friend's house, they'd rent stuff all the time. And my first Halloween movie, seeing it in its entirety, not TV edition, was The Curse of Michael Myers. So arguably one of the worst ones, but it hooked me in to the point where I had to watch every other one. And at the drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs, all the 90s horror movies he did that were just cut to smithereens, but is a good way to satiate and learn about new horror before the internet.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm glad I didn't want to date you. Like my age or anything. Like, well, I think we're probably about the same age. I'm 47. About that, it's like it was almost podcasting before there was podcasting. You
Mm-hmm.
would get glimpse of what these horror movies were, and you'd go run and tell your friends, and then they would
Yeah.
tell you what they saw, and
Uh-huh.
then you guys would put together some weird story of how it would all mash together. I remember what was it? Friday the 13th. It was somehow like it was the original story of how Jason drowned, but then it was something else. I remember it was like some weird off story that we created, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not true at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What were some of those first ones for you, like that you just knew about, and then finally, like as a teenager, like you said, the VHS that you were finally able to get your hands on them?
Like I said, it was probably the Evil Dead franchise because the problem with like the video nasties of the 80s and everyone just putting everything out in the video, that if your mom and pop shop didn't have it, you're never going to know about it. And so, by the time I was able to start renting movies, it's good 10, 13 years after Evil Dead came out. So if it wasn't there, you're never going to know about it, And once I was able to find that out and was able to, get a job and get money, I went hardcore into Evil Dead, Bruce Campbell, all the 80s slashers for me, because that's what I really enjoy, so much so that I have an 80s slasher horror sleeve.
Nice.
So I have all horror on the lower part, but all the upper part is Evil Dead.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you talk about the video covers, on the podcast. That was kind of our first conversation point. Was you didn't know anything about the movie other than looking at the box art.
Yeah.
And that is how we learned about it. Was you just rent it. You like, this looks fantastic, and you have like the paragraph on the back. Okay, this is garbage.
Yeah.
After watching it.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this many times before, is that VOD and Netflix is the new video rental store. You just have the image to go off of, and you have the short little teaser. It's no different.
And it's funny because as a filmmaker too, I know you can make anything look good in 45 seconds. Like if you like the 45-second clip, I can cut the hell out of it. It's looking like a blockbuster. And then as soon as you turn it on, you're like, I remember we fell into the VHS that it was Pumpkinhead.
Yes.
Me and my friend, we scariest movie ever, someone told me. And it was like we did everything. We were going to stay up all night, and then we finally got to it. and it was all right, but it wasn't like the scariest movie ever. But you're right; it was very much, I guess, for certain kids that was our albums, our
Mm-hmm.
music albums. Like you'd go to the record store and you would see, okay, this looks awesome. I'm going to get this one. I don't know what it is. Same with like
Right.
a horror movie, right? You
Mm-hmm.
go down, and so I got to know, how did you circumvent the 17 and older section? Because I know you did. I know you
Absolutely.
did.
Absolutely, I did. The great thing about growing facial hair at a really young age.
I just picture like a little person, ZZ Top walking in. Yeah, I'm this old.
Well, that's how I did it at my house. But I said I had friends that their parents didn't give a crap what we watched. They go, all right, go pick something out. And we'd go pick it out, and we would do that. So when I was able to start doing that, that's how I branched out into the franchise. I go, all right, I know this is a franchise. I'm going to watch every single thing in it.
Yeah.
So from like The Curse of Michael Myers, which came out in 1996, and by the time H2O came out in theaters, I had already watched the franchise of Halloween. So it's kind of just going through and getting the 5 movies for $5 for 5 nights that you just go through and just like, I haven't seen this, and just pick it up.
Yeah.
You just go through it. If it's good, you watched it. If it's bad, you still watched it because you paid money for it.
Yeah, God, such nostalgia too. Just thinking about the Friday, Saturday nights. And you would still have 1 or 2 maybe left over Sunday morning that you would end up watching before school, where you had to go to bed that night. Oh man! So was it Halloween that was the one that introduced you? Is that still the one that holds that special place in your heart, or?
It does. We did a Halloween franchise recap and rewatch when Halloween Ends came out. And my co-host Salem had not seen some of them. Like he stopped after H2O. So he didn't get to see the fantastic one with Busta Rhymes beating up Michael Myers with Kung Fu.
We all could have done without that one, but
But no, it has a special place in my heart because I think the original Halloween is the standard for a holiday or really a slasher. Yeah, there's other stuff before it that it pays homage to, but it really set the stage to an independent horror movie. And I really enjoy that because, we tend to rip into big Hollywood movies a lot, but when we watch independent stuff or smaller crew stuff, we go a little bit easier just because we know they don't have the budget there. But if the story is good, it's going to be great. But Halloween for me, people, shit on it all the time. And it's unfortunate because I think Michael Myers is the OG guy. He may not have the biggest body count, but Friday the 13th was supposed to be a ripoff of Halloween, right?
Yeah.
So it continues that, and it really started the franchise. Like I said, Black Christmas arguably the first slasher, holiday movie, but there was never an official sequel to it.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it too. The Halloween series of Michael Myers, because some of the others, Friday the 13th, Freddy, and all that, like there is a sense of supernatural about it, and they kind of brought that in. And then I think it's just like killing for the sake of killing at a certain point. We're just going to do a head count, and I think Friday the 13th kind of turned into that, where there's a story behind Michael Myers. He's a crazy dude who, and that's really all you need to know. Is you don't want to answer the door. And I think originally like to looking before. I think that's like if you really look at it, being a filmmaking 101, it was John Carpenter, Crewman's had a camera. There was Jack their mask. We'll make it work, and that's
right.
Is where you'll see smoke going in front of the camera. It's John Carpenter smoking cigarettes behind the camera, blowing his smoke, and you'll just see it like trickily, like it's not an effect. He's just smoking cigarettes, and it's just that's indie filmmaking 101. But you're right, the story's there, and it took it like you forgave the little nuances because it was story driven.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Donald Pleasance yelling all the time was perfect too.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
yeah, it was a very Obi-Wan Kenobi feel,
Mhm.
bringing him in like Alec Guinness a character almost. You
Right.
wanted that seasoned actor to kind of bring validation to it, and he definitely did.
Oh yeah, for sure. And really introduced the idea of the final girl that really stays in the franchise, because while we have final girls for the most part, you talk about the first Friday the 13th, Adriana King, she was in the second one, but she immediately gets killed. So Friday the 13th started the trend of you survive, but if you're in the next one, you're dying.
Yeah.
So Laurie Strode, we have the ultimate final girl versus the ultimate evil. And I think that just holds true and better than any other one, quite honestly.
What did you think about the Rob Zombie? I'm going to go with the first one. We'll talk about the second one. We'll put that on the show.
Yeah.
What did you think about the first Rob Zombie remake of it?
So when I first saw it, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Because I think they gave too much of a backstory and too much lore to Michael Myers. I think he was better off being just the shape. He was, that's what he was. And Rob Zombie incorporated his mom still kind of being alive for the most part, and we get into the dream sequences of the second one and stuff like that, even to the point where he talks and it's, die. And that's not who the shape was. Now, I have revisited the movies since then. I appreciate the first one more now than I did when it came out. I know a lot of people gave Rob Zombie a lot of crap for it, and that was his passion project too.
Yeah, I didn't hate the first one. I thought it was decent. Like I didn't hate. Like I agree, there was a lot of backstory for Michael Myers, but I did like the little bit of, like, if they would have sprinkled it in a little less, like, just kind of, okay, this is what happened. He had a traumatic experience. He's a nut. Now he's getting out of the thing, and he's going to find his sister. Like, I get that, to go that deep into it. The second one, as soon as the horse walked in the hospital, I was done. I was just like, what?
Yeah. But like I said, I'm for the Halloween franchise, I am very forgiving though. So
yeah. And then the last two ones, how did just real quick? I'll give you just I didn't hate them. I know there's a lot of arguments about it. Whatever, it is what it is. Evil dies tonight. Still puts a smile on my face when I hear the line. But I really enjoyed Michael Myers in this one. The acting, if you will, like when he's stabbing and just the little nuances with his head, it really gave that, like, I'm interested in what I'm doing. Oh, if I stab him like this, blood goes like that. Oh, I really enjoyed that. The story, it was what it was, and it did put a little ending. How did you feel about the last few of them?
This is, I know I'll get a lot of crap for it too. I did not like Halloween Ends because it was not a Michael Myers story, right? It was a Corey story. And if that's what the movie was intended to be about, that's fine. You could not have Michael Myers in it. You could have had a Halloween 3 again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And realistically, I think the marketing buildup is kind of what soured it for a lot of people. Is like the ultimate showdown between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, and it wasn't.
Yeah. That was, and then the ending, the whole, like, we're gonna put him through the grinder and the blender. And spoiler, guys, sorry if you haven't seen it. Like, I'm assuming you probably just already know. You know what? I always thought that the writing would have kind of, I think, would have been a little better is if you did the Corey storyline, but you never show Michael Myers, and it's almost like he just picks up the Michael Myers mantra, but you don't know it throughout the whole movie until the very end, and then it's Corey, and you're like, oh my God, But Michael Myers is dead and gone. He's not living in a cave somewhere feeding dogs. Yeah,
for sure. And I think what they kind of did was the idea of evil being passed on, which was in the director's cut of Curse of Michael Myers, where Donald Pleasance gets the mark on his wrist. Paul Rudd becomes the new Donald Pleasance, and Michael Myers dies in it. right? So
Yeah.
that was the alternate take that obviously wasn't canon, but now we're at 4 different timelines for the Halloween universe. But yeah, I agree. If Corey had just become the new Michael Myers, because let's face it, Michael Myers was born in 1956, and at this point in time, he's almost 70 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have been okay with it if they just passed it on and stuff like that. Now, is he going to stay dead? No, he's not staying dead.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I actually just saw that they're working on like I don't know if it's a reboot or what you want to call it, but it's in the works. It sounds actually kind of exciting. I don't know if they gave it enough time to rest, but it is Hollywood, so nothing gets enough time to rest.
Right, and I think this is kind of helping the resurgence of slashers. Slashers died out by the late 90s for the most part. Scream kind of helped revitalize it.
Yes.
But, we had Michael Bay's Friday the 13th or his Dune Platinum series. We also had his, Nightmare on Elm Street. And those stopped at that point in time. Obviously, we have the Crystal Lake show coming out this year as well. But slashers died out. And then we came into this intellectual, elevated horror mind point where it's not just about slashing and killing. There's story, there's character development. It's not just, here's awesome kill sequences. Let's try to figure out how to fill it in with some story in between.
Yeah. And then the whole stereotypical murder victims kind of fell off to the wayside too. You don't get the crazy teenage kids out partying, and
right.
One guy's a jock, one guy's a stoner, like whatever it may be. But yeah, what are some of your newer favorite horror movies that are coming out? Because you're right, the genre has changed quite a bit, and you're almost seeing more of a sophisticated slasher humor on some of these newer ones. What are some of the ones that are coming out that you're excited about?
Coming out this year, I'm excited to see how Hellraiser sequel comes to be, because let's face it, Hellraiser had about 3 good movies. Now 4 at this point in time. We did that. We did the Hellraiser series, and it's just got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
So it's nice that we're having these franchises come back a lot. I'm excited for Crystal Lake. I'm excited for this potential Halloween reboot. They're talking about new Nightmare on Elm Street that maybe will be good. And it's great that we're seeing this callback to this IP. Now, new movies that I've enjoyed that have come out the past couple of years is obviously anything Ari Aster. Because I love Hereditary, I love Midsommar. Yeah. I liked Beau is Afraid. Yes, it was a 3-hour movie. Some people wouldn't call it horror, but you realize that it was satirical horror, that everything was blown out of proportion. His point of view of New York City is what most people think of New York City. It's not how it really is,
Yeah.
So
it's getting so sophisticated. Horror, like you said, Hereditary. I mean, God, that's such a sophisticated movie for me. Yeah, like we started off the podcast me saying, "Hey, throw 4 kids in a room and you scare them." You go to Hereditary, and that's the exact opposite of what that is. Like, it's very well written, thought provoking.
Right.
Yeah. Do you see more horror going in that direction?
Yes and no. I think we're going to be inundated by the Ari Asters, by the A24s, by the Mike Flanagans of stuff of, horror usually was considered turn off your mind and watch gruesome kids getting killed, maybe some TNA, and that was about it, right? For the spectacular kills. Now we have more of these slow burns, these buildups. There's stuff in the backgrounds. We have more audio and visual cues to things going on there that we may not perceive, and we get the sense of unease, and we don't know why. So I do enjoy that a lot, but it's hard to do well, I think. And I think that's the issue with the elevated horror, is that it's hard to do well. Now I do enjoy a lot of horror comedies. This is an old one, but Cabin in the Woods. One of the trope of horror movies, and it did it perfectly.
Yeah, that thing was nailed down. And you know what? They got, I wouldn't say lucky, because they probably knew, getting Chris Hemsworth before he was Chris Hemsworth, and they just kind of sat on it for that year or whatever, and then they're like, "Hey, we got Thor, guys. He's in our movie." And that had to be such a, as a director or filmmaker, you're like, cha-ching, and you know,
Yeah.
and it was so well written. Probably one of the better movies, not just horror movies, I've seen in a long time. Like original movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we are getting kind of flooded by the mainstream, Hollywood side of we're getting Saw 11. Do we need a Saw 11? Probably not. But
Yeah,
it is there. I really think the future of horror though is the indie filmmaker.
Yeah,
because that's where the original stories, that's where the original ideas are coming from.
Yeah. Speaking of which, not to cut you off, I've been waiting to segue in it. I'm a huge fan, and I love it. There's such a throwback feel. I don't know how you feel about them, but the Terrifier series,
Yes.
Art the Clown. Oh my God!
Yes.
Like, yeah, I've met them several times. I even went in at conventions. Like every time I go, I'm like, hey, no more Art the Clown autographs, no more stuff. And I see something original, I'm like, I gotta get them to sign this. And I go, and my whole house is like, I get Art the Clown everywhere, and I have to cut back, but I'm excited about it. Especially that second one that came out last year, had a very Dream Warriors vibe to it.
Yes.
Reminded me a lot of the old school, like Freddy Krueger and that. And I think that's a great way of bringing it back.
Oh yeah, I mean, it to me, because I'm just too nullified to horror at this point in time. But they're like, oh, that Terrifier 2 scene. I watched the movie and I'm like, did I miss the scene that everyone was talking about? Yeah. I'm like, this isn't anything I haven't seen before, but it is a good way to introduce newer audiences to horror, to that iconic stuff. Because yes, the practical effects are amazing, but they are very reminiscent of fantastic 80s practical effects.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so great to see people like, I'm not a gore guy by any means. Like actually a lot of Rob Zombie movies I don't like because I think he just overdoes it and it's just unnecessary to a certain degree. But when I watch these Terrifier movies, that's cool. Because there's so much gore that it's funny. You're just like when he's ripping out guts and he's playing with them and stuff, and you're just like, that's just silly, But it's great, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I enjoy them. My wife will not watch them just because of the body horror. She prefers the 80s body horror because you can tell it's fake. Yeah. The Saw franchise and the torture porn and stuff like that. She goes, I can't watch it because it's too realistic.
Yeah. Oh, the Saws can get really
But
what did you think of that the last Saw that came out last year?
I think it was about 15 years too late.
Yeah. You know what? It should have been like 3 or 4, right? That should have been like right after the second one, or maybe like after the third one.
Yeah.
But, for the Saws, I didn't hate it. I thought the story was decent. At least it was a way to bring him back at least a little bit,
right?
And that's why I think a lot of people forgave it. They're like, okay.
But I mean, they should have known after Saw 3 and 4 when they killed off John Kramer that they need John Kramer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's have him be here for 2 minutes in Saw 5, or it's just his voice. Or, you just not have John Kramer at all and call it Spiral. But I mean, it's obviously horror movies, the continuity is never, ever really in place. But to me, the biggest problem with Saw X was it took place between 1 and 2, right? Yeah. That it is continuity wise destroyed the continuity of everything that existed in there.
Yeah, and unless it's like a movie like that is perfectly written, you bring up, like you said, so many problems throughout the whole franchise. Now all of a sudden, especially with the way the internet is, people they'll get in there and be like, "No, that's impossible. He was dead at this time," like, or whatever it is. Yeah, so you really have to be careful on the adding something so many years later into a franchise. A lot of franchises, like in horror, the milk money. That's what I call it. They just milk that money. What are some of the franchises that you've seen that started off just tremendous, and then they just like you're just like, oh God, I don't even want to see The Hills Have Eyes 17. Like,
oh, Hellraiser for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Like I said, I love the first 4 Hellraisers. The fourth one, not so much, but it's still on par with it. And we have coined something now. This is because of the first franchise we've seen do this, is we call it the Hellraiser syndrome, where you have a movie plot and you go, you know what this needs? 30 seconds of Pinhead. Boom, Hellraiser movie. That's what happened with Hellraiser 5, 6, 7, and 8, is they legit were separate movies. And they go, you know what? We'll put the Hellraiser name onto this, therefore it's a Hellraiser movie. And that's what they did. Obviously, Cloverfield does that too, but Hellraiser to us was the first franchise that we've seen do that. So we call it the Hellraiser syndrome. It was clearly written as something else.
Always threw me off is when they're all just like hanging out, like in hell, whatever like that room is. When they're all together, it just always would throw me off. I'm just like, would they just all be together? I mean, like this is really weird. What did you think of the most recent Hellraiser?
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a return to form for Hellraiser. I know a lot of people got angry, like, oh, it's the priest isn't Doug Bradley. Oh, the priest is, a woman. It's the priest was androgynous in the books. First off, the priest didn't have a name until Hellraiser 2. They was never called Pinhead. He was the priest. And as if you watch the Hellraiser franchise, you know that he loses his Cenobite as he becomes human again in the Hellraiser franchise. And new Cenobites come all the time. So you don't have to have Pinhead. You don't have to have Doug Bradley. I love Doug Bradley, but you don't have to have him. And I think that movie showed that you can do that. You're able to add to the existing lore, changing nothing, and you have brand new Cenobites. Because let's face it, we all were there to see the Cenobites. We had, I think number 3 had CDs in his head.
But man, when the later you got into those ones, the worse the Cenobites got. Like you're just like,
oh yeah,
they just pulled a janitor out from the back, and they're like, "You put on this outfit real quick and stand back there."
Yeah, it reminded me that some of the Cenobites later ones reminded me of their creatures, Belial's family in Basket Case 2 and 3.
Oh my God! Yeah. Oh man. How do you feel about like Universal Monsters and those type of horror movies?
Love them, absolutely,
like the classics, right?
Yes. So I'm going to do my other sleeve, and it's going to be a gothic cemetery leading up to a forest to a castle. That's what I want to do for my other sleeve. I love the Universal Monsters. They are fantastic. They're classic for a reason, and something we've talked about before in the podcast, the first couple episodes, was where it went wrong. Because it went wrong when they all met Abbott and Costello. It became comedy at that point in time. And then Hammer Horror brought them back in the 60s and 70s and brought them to be terrifying again. Now we go fast forward another 20 years, and then we get the Mummy franchise, right? Fantastic movie. Not a horror movie, it's an action movie.
Yeah.
And then the multiple attempts at the dark universe that they did. And they didn't lean in the horror side of it. It was more action heavy. And I don't know if we can ever get back to the horror side of it, because it's become too comedical. It's too actiony. It's part of mainstream knowledge of everything. It's parodied so much that we don't know the true phrases of anything anymore. We know the parodies instead. With the exception being The Invisible Man that Blumhouse did. And that was a fantastic way, I think, of doing Invisible Man. Yes, we had Hollow Man in 1999 with Kevin Bacon. But, The Invisible Man, he was, first off, played by someone different every single movie. Is a different thief, essentially, who did science to become invisible. And I think using technology and the photoreceptors and cameras used on the suit was a good way to incorporate technology and science into the Invisible Man. So I think it did it perfectly for that.
So if they were going to try to do the dark universe again, like, do you think they just pretty much like almost would have to reinvent certain characters without, like, so your Dracula, maybe just make him way more aggressive, way more, that you kind of take him a little more seriously than the you know, like
Right.
yeah, because you said they are watered down at this point. I mean, all of them are. You see them walking around Universal Studios and
Right.
different things. Yeah,
I think they could do great things with it. And they can use it for allegory and political statements as well with these universal creatures. If vampirism isn't a disease transferred by blood, I don't know what is. So
yeah,
you can absolutely do that. You're concerned. It's an allegory for insert whatever you want here, but it's still there. I think that's how you do Dracula. I personally think that introducing Abigail, that's coming out soon, which is Dracula's daughter, is not how you introduce the world to vampires in Universal movies. We don't do Dracula's daughter first, but we make Dracula to be this ruthless, really Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, not Saw, Blade. I think Blade was it 3?
Yeah.
I think they kind of got that right. It was he was dormant, he was asleep, and then they woke him up, and now he's pissed.
Right.
You're like, okay, and he could walk in the day, which I kind of liked. Like it was an ultimate match for Blade. But yeah, I think you would have to do something like that, right? Like you would have to just so much more aggressive and a hybrid almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the creature from Black Lagoon, obviously we got that with The Shape of Water.
And, yeah. Some of them I never put to, like when you said, and God, it was one of my favorite movies. You said The Mummy, like the Brendan Fraser mummies. I know it, the Mummy's in there, but I never once connected it with the Universal Mummy movies. Like to me, it was a whole different, different thing. And when you said that, I'm like, well, it is a Universal property. Wow, I guess it is the Mummy. Like,
he's Emotep. He was that was the Mummy in the original. The Mummy was Emotep.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
yeah, you just blew my mind. Yeah.
So I think having the undead, or realistically, someone who is thought to be dead, come back. Right. You can do the Mummy kind of in that way. I've argued that Jekyll and Hyde is the Incredible Hulk at this point in time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So, but I mean, you can still have that idea of Jekyll and Hyde and have it be about mental illness, tastefully, And the Wolfman. I know Blumhouse is doing one. I love the Benicio del Toro one with Anthony Hopkins. I thought that was done really well. But I think they just make these ruthless creatures and really have them win. You could do it.
Yeah. What did you think of? What was the Lycans versus? I can't think of the name.
Underworld.
Underworld. Yeah.
Yes.
How did you like the way that they were portrayed in like those type of films?
I liked the fact that they had essentially werewolves be the servants of the vampires. That's very classic lore, especially like the werewolf video games, stuff like that's been going for a couple of decades. And it's true that I like the war between them because that would exist. They have similar, depends what the lore you're following. They have similar, vulnerabilities, right? Silver somehow became a vampire thing when it's really a werewolf thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, it was great action. It was a good, step up from Blade. They took Blade and then just ran with it and made it more horror oriented. But I think the history of it and kind of the old world mentality of it, that the vampires are old. They don't understand the real world, and just bringing these young hip vampires dressed in leather and look like they watched The Matrix way too many times in it. So I think they did. That's the action side of it that we got, in the early 2000s. Like I said, we have to bring it back to terrifying to really take it seriously at this point in time.
Yeah. You mentioned Blumhouse a few times. They've seemed to like really just step up, and they're like the premier horror studio at the time. How do you feel about like again, milking a franchise? Like we look at I really enjoy I can't say I haven't. I've enjoyed them all, but the first couple Conjurings,
Mm-hmm.
I really found it fascinating. And then, like, and you go with the real life Warrens, and you kind of look that up, and you're like, wow. But then when it gets to a point where Hollywood bleeds over, like the latest one where the murder, the devil inside me, or
Yep.
whatever, and then you read the real story, and it had nothing, like the trial had nothing to do with that, and you're like. uh, Again, milking the cow. How do
Mm-hmm.
you feel how do you feel about like those type of things?
So I have issues with the Conjuring universe as a whole, and kind of the Insidious as well, where they go. Nothing against James Wan. He convinced the studios to make it R-rated. Why? For being scary.
Yeah.
There's no blood. There's no cussing. There's nothing that would make it R-rated. So how is it R-rated? And I think they did that just to have that slap that restriction on there, just to try to sell more tickets.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
I have issues with the Warrens and their cause of the satanic panic across the United States.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story, those ones.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of religious themed horror movies, though.
Yeah.
Because it's how do you make it religious themed without shoving religion down your throat? I don't think you can.
Because good triumphs over evil, right? Like you
Right.
bring in the priest, or you bring in
Right.
the ultimate goodness, and it wins. That's you're 100% right. Anytime you bring in religion into it,
right. And I think movies like that, and where the new Exorcist could have been a lot better, was to explore different cultures, different people's belief systems of demonic possessions and stuff like that, to just be a cultural awareness thing of it, instead of just being Christianity all the time too.
Yeah.
Every religion has an exorcism.
Yeah. Do you think like the studios and everything, and obviously it's for money, but again, milking the cow, like, do you think you brought up Hellraiser, and you
Mm-hmm.
made a very valid point about how she stepped into that role, and I totally bought it, and I can agree with it. I'm like, okay, well, all you have to do is tell me. But do you think, like, instead of making a new Freddy, do you think it would be better to just do a whole new story, off of a new character, and bring him into that universe, and you start a whole new franchise off of that, instead of just and I'm just using Nightmare on Elm Street as
Right.
but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
everyone, it's a different Michael Myers. It's a different, and so instead of, like you said, Corey, maybe we
Yeah.
just run a Corey story,
Mm-hmm.
and then, with Michael Myers influences in it. Like,
Right.
Yeah. How do you feel about, like I said, going to the well,
I mean, like I said, I love the franchises.
Yeah.
So I want to see that continue. I would rather someone else pick up the mantle and play that character. We don't have to have Robert Englund, right? Yeah. We don't have to have Kane Hodder. We don't have to have Nick Castle. Obviously, he's only played like Michael Myers like 1.5 times at this point in time. I think if you can do the story justice, you should do it. But, honestly, not everything needs to be a franchise.
Yeah.
We could have stuff come up and just be a one and done. And you just go, yeah, I think you'd rather have people clamoring for more than people turning it off because they don't want to see the next one too.
Yeah. And you always leave them wanting more too.
Right.
So, I mean, that's,
Right. And within the franchises, there are nuggets of other people that can pick up the mantles for everything, right? You have, Freddy's dead. His daughter's there. She could easily have become the next Freddy Krueger or whatever it may be. But I think people would get very upset if you had a Nightmare on Elm Street with no Freddy Krueger, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. You've heard the rumors, them trying to think about rebooting Nightmare on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And we had actually discussed this on the show about how would you please everyone, which is impossible to do, like, yes, especially in the horror and the geek world. Like, there's no way you're doing it. But would you? The idea I had was a hybrid. So mm-hmm. Robert Englund's getting older. He already said he's not interested in doing the tumbling and the like the whole 9 stunt stuff. So would you almost do Robert Englund voiceover on a like don't show the face per se so much. It's in the shadows. It's
Mm-hmm.
Freddy's like and almost do like so you can still pay homage to Robert Englund. You still got the voice. But you got a younger guy doing the effects. He's running. He's doing all the things. And would that like do? How do you feel about like that kind of idea?
I'm perfectly okay with that because I said I'd rather see the character themselves come back, and I will go on the nerd side here. I didn't need to see Mark Hamill at 68 playing an old Luke Skywalker. I would have rather had Episode 7 be a new cast playing a year later from Episode 6. Right? We are, especially in the horror world, we are so gung ho on this is the person. It could only be, Tobin Bell as John Kramer. It could only be Robert Englund. It could only be Kane Hodder. It could only be Doug Bradley. It can only be Bruce Campbell. It can only be, all these people. And I'd rather see the story continue because we have people recast all the time, especially in horror movies, from one to the next. So I'm okay with anyone doing it because let's face it, even in 2003 in Freddy vs. Jason, yes, he was the close-up shots, but he wasn't doing all the physical fighting, So to me, it's not any different. But I know a lot of people have issues with, why is the actor that's portraying him not doing the voice? And I get that, but that happens all the time in every movie, so it's not any different to me.
Yeah, and and you brought up Jaws in the beginning, and I think one of the things that made Jaws so horrifying is they didn't really show the shark until it was time to show the. So imagine doing that with Freddy. You just see him popping out of the shadows. You see it, but you hear the voice, and you're like, "Oh my God, that's Robert Englund." And then, but until the very end, and it could even still be a throwback, a CG or something. I'm more of a practical effects guy.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. But yeah, even if you throw Robert Englund in that makeup for those 3 or 4 exposure shots, I mean, like how great would that be? People would
it'd be it'd be fantastic. And patent pending idea here is Freddy Krueger causes sleep paralysis, and he is the dark shadows and sleep paralysis.
Oh man, yeah, you could. I mean, that's a whole nother. You could even let's say copyright Daily Dank, guys. You could even do like I can see the trailer already. Slenderman, blah blah blah, and you're just naming off all these creepypasta characters. They're all me. And boom, all like the sleeping. You thought I was gone, and then you just start naming off Slenderman, and you're like, it's really been me the whole time.
Oh yeah,
I'm back, and you're like, holy shit, what?
Well, and that's the thing with the rise of people that seem to be getting sleep paralysis. I know I suffer from it sometimes, and because I have anxiety attacks while I'm sleeping, and it causes that for me, where I can see everything. You have the classic idea of how we got the idea of incubuses and succubuses of people sleep paralysis and being awake but unable to move and stuff like that. And with sleep apnea, you can easily tie the rise of sleep apnea as well to Freddy Krueger.
Yeah. And and like just some of these genius writers, I mean, take like a storyline like that and can go crazy. One that I really, again, I thought was ingenious was It Follows.
Mm-hmm.
That's oh my God, that storyline was so groundbreaking and like this from beginning to end. Even the way they kill it, or I don't know what you want to call it, they get rid of it. Is genius. Like you're just like, man, whoever wrote that, like that team was so great and the cutting edge again, like is a horror movie that you didn't expect.
Oh yeah, for sure. I have concerns with They Follow coming out.
Oh, is it? Oh, damn.
Yeah. Because my concern is they're going to dive into the lore of it and will demystify the entity.
Yeah, which that I mean, like you look back at all the greats that like the surprise movies, if you will. Blair Witch comes to mind. No one saw that coming. My favorite Blair Witch story was I was at home. And it was the night before it came out, so the Thursday night. I'm flipping this. I just kind of heard about it on the news. I don't really know much about it. Sci-Fi Channel had a documentary about the Blair Witch, not about the movie. It was a fictional documentary that they didn't say was fictional. So I'm like, wow, this is wow, really? And then I go see the movie the next day. I was unhinged. I came home, every little, it's the Blair Witch. It's the Blair Witch. What's going on? What's going on out there? But I mean, what a brilliant marketing strategy and then a brilliant movie. But then when you get into it and you're like, we're going to tell the lore. And then all of a sudden you get Blair Witch, Book of Shadows, and you get,
Right.
yeah, like this kind of just goes all up that. How do you feel about that? Do you think you should just leave well enough alone on certain
Yes.
movies, or
Yes. I've had this argument with many people before because a lot of people don't like where evil wins. I absolutely love it. I love when evil wins because, for example, Smile. And people like, it's a bad ending. She couldn't defeat the creature. I go, how would she? What did she do to learn about it? Nothing. She didn't. She just traced it back a couple of people. She didn't learn its name. She didn't learn its lore. She didn't learn anything about it. So how is she going to defeat the entity in Smile? And evil wins. And there's going to be a Smile too. Do I think they're going to go more into the lore? I think so. I think, though, it should be more of a mystery overall, though.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Lost the camera for a second.
Oh,
I was
no
just going to
worries.
message you on there. All right. So yeah, it does like we were saying, you should just sometimes leave well enough alone, but you get the people in there, like the money people, and I would imagine as a filmmaker it gets exciting. You
Right.
want people to to watch your movie, and all of a sudden there's a demand.
Mm-hmm.
What are some franchises that should have just straight up just left, even on the second one? You're just like, all right, the first one should have been one and done. Some of your favorite mishaps, if you will.
That is a great question. I'm going to say The Exorcist.
Yeah.
It's a very unpopular opinion that we have at the podcast that Exorcist franchise is garbage. It's especially Exorcist 2. Like you watch that now and still makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Period. Exorcist 3 kind of was okay-ish, but still everything after that has just been awful. It's kind of a one and done. It's Pazuzu. We didn't even get the name of Pazuzu really until Exorcist 2. So you should just been a one and done and called it quits at that point in time.
Yeah, I liked what they did with the series on Fox, the Exorcist series. I was a fan of that. It only lasted 2 seasons, but it was just based on what the Exorcist should have been: 2 priests going on the road,
Right.
and they're killing demons. You know what I mean? They're doing, and you get 4 or 5 episodes in one house, and then they move on to the next one, and it's what I think the Exorcist should have been. And then they're the overall evil that you're fighting. But yeah, it would have been nice to see like Exorcist 1, the introduction, Exorcist 2, the same guys, but now we're dealing with something different or the same, but in a different location.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many ways you can get away with that. Like you said, The Conjuring, I think, is getting to that point now where like The Nun, and the newest Nun was basically the original Nun, just set in a different small town than the other Nun took place in.
Correct. And was it Jacques? Pierre, I don't remember the French guy's name that was possessed then too.
Yeah. Took off on the
yeah. I mean, like I said, Insidious is the same way. The last Insidious that just came out, right? Awful. We called it unresolved threads because they had all these other plot points, and they set up with these movies is they go, we're making this scary creature Valak, aka the Nun, just to spin it off. We created Annabelle just to spin it off.
Yeah.
We created the bye-bye man, or the guy in the breathing apparatus in Insidious that was dying in the apartment, just to be able to spin it off.
Yeah, you can see the gears, the bank working on that one. Those guys are already counting their money at the studio, and that's a real bummer. with a lot of these indie filmmakers, they don't get their chance, and
Mm-hmm.
they're coming up with movies. That's why I'm so supportive of the Terrifier series and getting those guys word out. So being so deep into horror movies, where are
Mm-hmm.
some places that we could go and see some of these movies that we're, like you're not going to see on Netflix, you're not going to see, on your mainstream? Where are some of the places you go to check out some of these off the wall ones?
Shutter is a huge one. That's a lot of stuff going to it. Tubi has been fantastic for the independent film creators. I don't know if you know this, but I've been part of indie films now as well.
No,
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So last year I was talking to the folks over at Horror Dads Productions, the Tahoe Joe, the Woodman, Mothman, and I interviewed them, and they go, "Hey, I'm filming this movie. You want to come out and be part of it?" Okay, sure.
Yeah,
I just
nice.
talked to him for 30 minutes on the show. I'll drive down to central Illinois and spend the night over a weekend somewhere. Sure, perfectly fine. But it satiated me.
And then Diddy pops up out of nowhere.
Right.
You're like, wait a minute. Sorry.
So 3 a.m. in a pot field, coyotes and cannon fire. That's the night. But I was enamored by it because I did theater and drama in high school. And when YouTube started, I did horror shorts.
Nice.
So I was always, writing, directing, and stuff like that. And then with the podcast, with other shows I do on YouTube, I've been more producing and editing. So we started, a group of us started Horror-Raven, RAVIN, and we're working on shorts and trailers and podcasts and stuff like that too, where we are working on it, and we have a TV show that we are filming the pilot for this summer to try to pitch it. It's called States Unknown, and if you think of your old Destination Truth, your Expedition X, and stuff like that, we're focusing on America, and we do 5 episodes per state, where we stay in the state and try to look at the biggest paranormal or cryptid or whatever is there.
Yeah.
But we come from it from a skeptic side. So the idea is to prove it exists. We're going there to prove it doesn't exist.
I love the take on it. Nice.
And the idea is that we do the evidence, we do the research, we go there, we film it, and then what evidence we may have, we debunk, right? And the idea is when you explain the known, you're left with the unknown. And then the idea is then to bring the evidence that we can't explain, that we may not be knowledgeable enough, bring it to the community, to the online community, and then do shows about it and Discord servers and chats like that to help disprove the evidence that is there.
I love ideas like that. I used to have an idea. I called it Lamb to the Slaughter, where you would bring like someone who just absolutely didn't believe in paranormal, and you just stick them in the craziest haunted location and be like, okay, tell us what you see.
Right.
I believe a group actually did that, and it was well produced. It was a show on YouTube called Skeptics. If you haven't checked it out, it's the exact same thing. They went to the Conjuring house, and you get Bob the businessman who's like, nope, there's no such thing as ghosts. And they're like, okay, Bob, here's the house. We'll see you in an hour. And then
right.
Bob the businessman comes out and is like, yeah, I believe in ghosts.
Yeah, I think it's stuff like that. So that's something we're working on. We are working on something called Backwards. We did a short where it's your phone messages and someone's always behind you. Like the message is someone always behind you.
Oh, man. That's creepy. And I can just imagine the way you feel like just out of the blue, they're just there, right? Like maybe a camera swing or something. Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we're trying to do our own viral marketing for it, where we are doing clips of the Backwards Man, as we call him, and we're saying lore pieces, but edit it so it's backwards. You'd have to get the audio file, be able to play it forward to figure out what is going on there. And that's a big thing we're working on. So we have snippets on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page that we're doing. So it's just a great way of doing independent stuff that I love stories. like that.
That's so cool. That's so cool. You know, in such a wide, I guess, ocean of podcasts and
Mhm.
creators and all that, you were saying like viral marketing and trying to stand out. What are some of the ways that you're using to, like, other than what you just told us? I know redundant. What are some of the other ways that you're using? You know, like to stand out. Like I said, you know, you got to make it's making the biggest splash. There's a million
Mhm.
waves coming in. You just got to make sure you're the biggest wave that people notice. What are some of the things that you guys are doing to get noticed?
Um, so since we're still small and new for the podcast, stuff like that, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. If it's horror related and you want to talk to us about it, we love to talk to you about it. So what we ends up usually happening when we have someone on and we interview, and we do a lot of research, like a lot of research. We watch most of their movies or teasers or read their books and stuff like that just to have a good conversation
Yeah.
with them. And so it seems natural and cohesive. And once we do that, and then they share it out with their friends, and all of a sudden we're booked for the next month.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really networking is really
Yeah.
the key to it all. Just to get the word out, and
Yeah.
like you're coming on here,
Mhm.
and then vice versa. Yeah, that definitely is almost like a pyramid scheme, but no one's getting hurt, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we just did Days of the Dead in Chicago 2 weekends ago.
Nice. Yeah,
Um,
we went to the Vegas one.
okay.
Just I think 3 weekends ago because it was right before Chicago.
Yeah.
Those are great. Those are
Yeah.
man. They really put on a good con. Those Days of the Dead.
Oh, for sure. So, we go there wearing our merch, of course, just
Yeah.
to do it. And, we talk to everyone there, right? So we go to
Yeah.
every vendor, we go to every table. If we can, we got media passes from Comic-Con ready to go there. So we were able to talk to a little bit to the celebrities, stuff like that. But the smallest person there is willing to talk to you. They're there with the table. They want to sell you on it. And so we just go there and spend time with them. We talk to them. We really are interested in what they're doing. And so we actually got the logo actually got recognized by a couple of people, which
Nice.
is odd for us to be out in public and people
Yeah.
recognize the logo, which is really cool. It's really fun because the person we had on 2 days before was there too. So we got
that's cool.
person. And like I said, you're right. It's just networking and just talking to people. I have people coming on here. I have a VFX guy coming on that did VFX for Smile and
Nice.
Hannibal, the TV show. He's like, "Oh, I'm nobody." I'm like, "No, you're somebody. You did something that is work, that is art, that needs to be recognized for it." And that's what we do. We just love talking to people.
That's so cool. Do you attend and try to get to a lot of cons?
This was my first con ever.
Oh wow!
So
Nice.
now we do. Chicago has a movie marathon that's about 14 hours called The Massacre every end of September, and we've sponsored it 2 years in a row now. So we will go there and say who we are. They have us introduce the movie that we're sponsoring. We got lucky; we were able to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so we got to talk to John Dugan for a while, the original grandpa from it.
Nice.
And then we sponsored Black Christmas, and it's just way for us to be on stage and give our information and just get out there. So
and be part of something cool too, right?
Yeah. And they also did, they do the horror tattoo panel at Days of the Dead.
Yeah.
And I walked in, the guy goes, "Hey, you enter your tattoos into this." I go, "Okay, why not?" Like, sure, I don't know anything about it.
You're like,
I'll
I
just go
already
up there.
have them. Might as well enter them in. Yeah.
Yeah. I won
Don't have
second
to
prize.
wash 'em.
I won second prize in my category. So now my picture with my logo and my tattoo is on Days of the Dead.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So your first con, like, was it overwhelming? Was it like, did you know what to expect, kind of, or was it like you kind of knew, but when you see these guys in their full outfits, and I mean, it's a lot.
It is a lot. I was expecting it's a good size. Don't get me wrong. I was expecting just like this craziness. Like I was thinking like LA Comic-Con type deal. But I know horror is a smaller niche than anything else. But it was great. I'm the face of the podcast. My off-screen producer here, no one really ever sees his face. He's always off screen. We hear his voice a lot, but and I'm okay with it just because I've been on many YouTube channels and been part of that growth of their channels too. So it's really great. And like I said, with Distance Nerding, who I'm a host on, I meet a lot of independent comic book writers. I meet independent filmmakers, and they want to talk to me about going to their cons, going to their shows. I've been invited onto a couple sets. I ever get to LA for an NDA signed thing I have to do to get into a horror movie set.
Nice. Hey, man, yeah, that's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, and then talking to the comic book creators, there's a lot of horror comic book creators that are independent out there, and we have ideas with people I know in the circles that their movies would be great comic books. And why not do a multimedia attack on their movies and then be able to continue the lore? You may not have the funding to do it yourself, but you'd have a movie, you have the story in place, and you have the proven track record to get the bigger budget.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Chicago a couple times. Are you based out of Chicago?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so I grew up here in Arizona, but I grew up on WGN. Lifelong Cubs fan, my whole life. Bears, Bulls, Bozo the Clown, you name it. Like, I basically am from Chicago without ever being to Chicago. That's the way I look at it. Going for my first time on my birthday next month. We're going for 5 days. We're going to see the Cubs at Wrigley for the first time. I'm super pumped. There's that I could, we got 5-6 days or sites that I should try to make time. South side.
I mean, yeah. Hey, I'm from the South Side area. I'm a Sox fan here, so yeah. No, it's. I mean, a lot of stuff. It's more outside of Chicago, right? There's Resurrection Cemetery, which is supposed to be the most haunted cemetery in the United States, with Resurrection Mary. Yeah. It's also places where people were buried 2 or 3 deep in the grave. So if you want to go to the most haunted cemetery, absolutely go there to Resurrection Cemetery. You have the Northwest campus, Northwestern University campus, if you want to go see all the scenes from Flatliners.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, like, I love roadside attractions. I love like different stuff. So that's why I'm like, man, and who knows, the next time, it's a bucket list thing for me just to even be in Chicago and eat one of those deep dish pizzas, a bundt cake. Give me a bundt cake pizza, please. So yeah, no, I'm excited about it all, and I just really want to like absorb and just be there and like just all the history and stuff. Like, again, you hear, as a kid, you hear so much about a horror movie, about Chicago, and you just become fascinated that finally, as an adult, when you get to see it, you're just this wide-eyed kid being like, oh my God.
Right. Yeah, don't look for Cabrini Green. You don't want to do that. That is the South Side.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, because, I usually wear something Cubs, so if I'm hanging out near Comiskey, probably not the best. Is it still Comiskey? Is that, or am I like going way old school?
It's is it? It was U.S. Cellular. I think it's Field Rate. I don't know what it is anymore.
Yeah.
I haven't been there in a while, but I see that you have Guaranteed Rate Field is what it's called now. I still call it Comiskey. But are those your arcade machines by you?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to waste an entire day or 3, go to the Galloping Ghost arcade.
Okay.
It is the country's largest arcade. They probably have about 700 arcade machines.
Wow. Yeah, I'll waste the day there. I know I'm super proud. We're getting totally off of horror. Sorry, guys.
No.
I'm super, and it sounds silly, but man, I would wake up, especially being in Arizona, the time difference. I didn't have to be up for school as a young kid till like 7 o'clock. I'd wake up at 5 so I could catch Bozo at John W. and just lay on the couch and watch it. So they have the broadcast museum, and I guess they have a whole Bozo exhibit. And I'm just like, my girlfriend's like looking at me like, really, Bozo? I'm like, yeah, grand prize game. You don't understand.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh, I got to talk to Joey Garcia in the interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's insane. Like, how was that?
It was awesome. It was awesome. I guess I left a good enough impression, hopefully, that when he was at, because a lot of people I work with are in the LA area or San Fran area, they did a Gem State Comic Con. He asked about me, so I was
nice. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I'm super pumped for that. I'm gonna definitely check out some haunted stuff and a lot of mobster stuff. That's
well,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You can't, yeah. I'm sure you can't walk down the street without bumping into some kind of mobster, something like a tour or some whatever. So
Oh, there's tons. I'd have to look. I'll have to hit you up and see if there's a good haunted tour.
yeah,
Like I said, a lot of stuff is in the suburbs, though. Unfortunately.
yeah,
So.
yeah. And then it's funny because being in rural America, I'm like, well, how many miles is it? And then when you realize city miles, you're like, yeah, no, I ain't going that far.
We don't measure in miles. We measure in time.
Yeah.
How far from Chicago? I could say 16 miles, but I really mean an hour and a half.
Yeah, see, that just blows me away because, like, where I'm at, it's 16 miles just to get to the grocery store. And that's just a straight drive. I'm like, oh, it's like 20 minutes, 16 miles. But yeah, in the city, yeah, 16 miles is not 20 minutes, right? Oh, so what? I know I kind of asked you this earlier, but with all the rumors, like the settlement of the Friday the 13th franchise and all this stuff, what are some of the things you're super pumped about? Not even just this year releases that could be possible. The rumors, the innuendo that that you're hearing. What are some of the exciting things that maybe you can fill us in on?
Like I said, Hellraiser, the sequel reboot. I think they just talked about that today. Honestly, I like the rumor mill of new Evil Dead movies.
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
And that that while Bruce Campbell is officially retired as Ash Williams, physically, he still does the voice of Ash Williams. I would personally love to see him in more of them because they've talked with Sam Raimi, Freddy Alvarez, Lee. I think his name is Lee, right? That's the newest one of expanding the franchise and stuff like that. So I'd love to see Bruce Campbell be the contiguous old man that has the shop that they have to go to when they're fighting Deadites.
Yeah, and he plays that perfect role. Remember Spider-Man?
Yep.
When he was that snarky guy in all the Spider-Mans, that would be perfect. He could be behind the counter and just be like, "Are you sure you want to buy?" Like that. Are you sure that's the one you want to pick? Where do you see in that kind of a franchise? How would you like to see them? I guess transition into a new main character. How would you like to see a whole new Ash, or would you like to see them create something from nothing and start a whole new thing?
I think that's because Evil Dead is my all-time favorite movie of everything. I honestly want Bruce Campbell to be Ash Williams forever, right?
Yeah.
I think what Freddy Alvarez did and leaded with the universe is you can have stories in the world that deal with the Necronomicon. I think that's the best path forward, is to really distance himself from Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams. We don't need an Ash Williams. We just have a new group of people. We don't even have to have the same group of people every single time. You can just tell stories in the same universe. I think that's the best path forward for that franchise.
Yeah, because if you really think about evil, like demons and whatever it may be there, are they really just isolated to you and your family? Like, I know that's what we see in the movie, but in the enormous, could they be possessing 8 families at once? And they just kind of pop back in and be like, okay, I'm checking in on you guys. I got to go back over here. And that could definitely be like that whole franchise, just different families, different individuals dealing with, that could be great. Yeah, I like, you don't really need just the one main hero, right? Because the villain takes over, like your Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger. There isn't one main,
right?
Like, you have your final girl, but I mean, when you get down to Friday the 13th, 19, that final girl's long gone, and it's whatever, Jason in space.
No, like I said, I think we, with what they could go do with that franchise, is obviously we can have the translation happen over records or old tape players. It's the internet age. Someone plays it online and causes the Kandarian demons to appear all over the world.
Yeah. And and in other movies where they've done similar, you look at Jumanji, went
Right.
from a board game, and then and it was such a simple explanation. I'm magic. I'm going to turn into this now.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay, and we all bought it, and we were all good. But yeah, I mean, it's just a simple thing like that that could really just expand that universe and be just something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll ask you this one, and this is going to be the $1 million question. And so get your thinking cap on. This
Okay.
will be the one that we end with. So, out of all the true crime stories out there in the world, if you could turn one into a horror franchise, which one would you pick out of every serial killer, real life, every kind of thing? And it doesn't have to be per se Ted Bundy, but you could take that Ted Bundy story and make it into Jed Dundee.
I would absolutely love to see a modern day Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
Because there is that intrigue. We don't really know who he was. We have lots of theories. There's, the great grandson of him said, "Oh, it's DNA testing proved it's, I'm related to him. It's that doctor and had the stuff." But you want the quintessential unknown fear of people getting killed by a serial killer. Jack the Ripper is, I think, the story to do it.
Yeah. Would you do it modern times? Like actually make it a whole new, like it's same kind of premise, but just done like maybe truck stops or wherever, instead of alleyways. I like that. I think like when they did Jack the Ripper, I forget the Johnny Depp one. Wasn't there a Johnny Depp one?
Yes.
It kind of threw me off because of the time period of the period of the movie, where, like you said, like if it is a modern time, I think it resonates a lot more, and it's something new, right?
Right. I mean, let's face it. If you go to Chicago, and unfortunately, people get killed there all the time, are you really going to piece together a serial killer across the entire city? I don't think you would.
Yeah.
There's enough parkways, pedways, towns that you're able to go into and really be able to do it in a modern city, and then instill that fear that exists into that city.
Yeah, and you could go like you were saying,
but personal stabbing.
Yeah, and you were saying too about like making tackling social issues, through a horror genre. You could do Jack the Ripper, but he goes after indigenous women, which is a huge issue right now. That these women are going missing. Maybe shed a light on that, and all of a sudden, and that's a great premise, as well.
I'd also like to see the true crime podcasters also muck up the police investigation.
What do you? So I'm sure you've watched some of the series, like I've watched. What do you think of this? The sleuth, the internet sleuth world. Like some of it, like some of the documentaries. It starts off, and I'm like, really? Like you're that nosy into this guy's life or whatever, and then they do end up being a killer, and you're like, all right, I guess you had some point, but still, that your life is, like watching this guy's cat or whatever it may be.
Yeah, the wife is really obsessed with the true crime podcast and stuff like that, and there's something to say about that because that is real stuff and it does instill real fear into it. But the amateur sleuth side of it, I don't think you can always properly convey the true findings and evidence in the hour and a half format. Especially it's something that's been happening over decades. It's a lot of information, and unfortunately you have to pick and choose what you're going to represent. And I think that it's a kind of be a negative impact on how, especially with jury duty, and they hear stuff like that, they go, oh, well, I listened to this true crime podcaster and they said this evidence is the nail in there. If the evidence not there, then they're not guilty.
Yeah, and then they get so buried in too with their beliefs. I watched just one recently called "The Truth About Jim," and it was about a guy. He's passed away now. He was a stepfather, of course, of 3 girls, and it was just the women that he was the stepfather, and he was probably a bad dude. Like I don't know the guy. I'm not going to defend him, but some of the things that they brought up that he could have been the Zodiac killer, and that's when they lost me. I was just like, oh, and It was in Northern California in the 70s. There was a string, or 60s, string of runaway hitchhikers that were
Yep.
ended up murdered. Yeah, so they go there, and the guy had a cabin around that time. His family lived there. So there's a woman that they go and visit, and she bought the property. Had nothing to do with any of the murders, but she's so into it that she bought the property where these bodies were found, and she eats, breathes, and sleeps. So they're talking, and she's like, "Well, there's a witness that I know. It was the last one to see these girls alive. This is like 47 years ago, before I was even born." So they go and they meet this woman, and the woman's telling it like it was yesterday. We were at the roller rink, and my two friends wanted to go smoke a joint with a guy. And I looked at the guy, and he didn't look like a middle schooler to me, is exactly what she said. So then they're like, "Well, if I showed you a picture of my step-grandfather, could you identify him?" This is like a 47-year-old man. And they're like, "That's him. That's him." You just said he wasn't a middle schooler. You didn't say he was a full-grown man that could have been your teacher. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And they're just so thirsty. And then they brought up the Zodiac Killer, and I'm like, nope, I'm done. Like, I can't. Like, Like, I'm sure he wasn't a nice guy, but still, like, was he the Zodiac Killer? Probably not.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I would love to see like more true crime movies kind of turn into a horror movie aspect. So I said it was going to be the last question, but we'll keep going. What do we need to do, in your opinion, to save the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise at this point?
Not do any more prequels, first and foremost. And Leatherface doesn't have to be an 80-year-old man anymore. He's 80 plus in the franchise at this point in time. We need to just tell a new story. It could be another Leatherface, but it doesn't have to. The time frame doesn't have to match up to the original at this point in time.
They just modernize it, right?
Yeah.
Like not even a reboot per se.
Yeah.
Just that now it's happening. And I think with characters like that, you don't really even need to explain their age. Like, because they're, like Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, you don't, like Jason, you don't really ever think, oh man, the dude's like 90 now. How is he picking up that machete? But say with he's not picking up that chainsaw at 80 years old, chasing young kids.
Yeah, and he's just a guy
from his porch.
He's just,
get off my lawn.
He's literally just a guy. There's nothing supernatural about him. So it's just another family that does that in Texas.
Yeah. Would you like to see them go to like the more of the Ed Gale story behind that? Yeah, like then just to kind of make up their own, because that's a horrifying story. I mean, just by itself,
I think they need to definitely go back to the barbecue place where they were selling the people they killed as barbecue on the roadside.
Do you ever hear that story of the guy who bought that cauldron and like he didn't have a clue about it? Like, no. So the one they had, so it was like at an auction, a police auction or something, and it was the cauldron that he was melting the bodies in. And he just bought it, and he said he's stuck in the garage for a while, and it was just weird. Like, he just picked up this weird vibe about it, and it went into a paranormal thing. But I mean, just imagine like after like 15 years of it being in your house, and then you find out like what it really was. And you're like, yeah. I think Zach Baggins owns it now, if I'm not mistaken.
Of course, he owned the house in Gary, a couple miles from me. He tore down a demon house too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the demon house, right?
Yeah. My parents know the priest that did that stuff, so
that's a crazy story. You know what sold it for me was the social worker and somebody else that was it a cop or a lawyer? It was a lawyer. Yeah, and like the lawyer couldn't, like, he's just like, I'm a man of logic. I have nothing. Like, I have nothing for you. And the lady quit her job. She's like, peace.
I know people involved with it, so I know what their mindset was. Is they are selling a story to make money.
Is that what it? Yeah,
that's all it is. I'm sorry to burst anyone's bubble.
Oh man, I wanted to see kids running up the wall.
No, I know someone that worked at the police department at that time too. So yeah.
Oh man.
So you can't go visit it. So you can go see another scary house in Gary, Michael Jackson's.
I was gonna. It wasn't. I know it's torn down now. Where was John Wayne Gacy? Was somewhere. His house. No, was it? It was in Indiana. Oh, never mind. I think it might have been in Indiana. I think I got. Where was John Wayne Gacy?
I thought he was. Where was he at? Near Chicago, Norwood Park.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like suburb, right? Yeah.
yeah, yep. Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'd prefer not to go see that one.
No.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I actually watched a horrible movie. It was a found footage movie about them doing an investigation at John Wayne Gacy's house, and John Wayne Gacy's ghost molests one of the workers, and they do a thermal of his underwear getting warm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a horrible movie, and the house had already been torn down at that point, and so it was all fiction. But do you see any revival of the found footage movie? Do you see, or is that like a dead genre that we're just going to give up on?
The independent movie stuff I work on is found footage. So
Nice. No, I enjoy it. I personally like. I think it's a unique way of telling a story. I love Cloverfield. I think Cloverfield did it magnificently. Blair Witch. I mean, that was the OG. And you see like some of these other ones, like if done right. I think you can do it. I think a lot of people just do it just almost like production value. Like as a handicap. But if it goes with your story, I definitely think it will work.
Well, I think especially the circle I know in this area is the found footage works now because okay, who's finding this footage, right? No one's holding the camera anymore. No one's going to keep holding the camera while crazy stuff is going on around you at this point. And you go, okay, great. But a couple of people I know, and that's really true, is it's being uploaded to the cloud. So that is the way you can find footage. Now it's in the dark web and stuff like that.
You know what? After I was gonna say after we end this thing, me and you need to hook up, man. I think because I'm a filmmaker. I have a studio. I have a full. I have two Reds. I own two Reds. Yeah, and a bunch of different cameras, and I haven't done anything cinematic. I don't know in a little while because of COVID, and then this is kind of what I've just been doing. It takes a lot of time, but yeah, I mean, I would love to go out and shoot some stuff or work together and figure out a script. Like I said, man, maybe the Jack the Ripper. That screams indie film right there.
I also want to do Wendigo in a city.
What is that?
A Wendigo, the cannibal that is never satiated. It's the old Native American lore.
Really?
You turn into Wendigo that if you eat human flesh, you become a cannibal and you're never satiated. So you're always hungrier and hungrier. And it's always in the middle of the nowhere in the woods. I'd love to see a drifter Wendigo that goes across the country.
Yeah. I mean, just everything in the woods screams horror too. Like it's such speaking of production value, shot right in the woods, man.
Yeah,
like, that's everything. We shot I guess it would be more of like a psychological thriller up in the woods where we're from, up in the mountain, and it was so cool. The elk and everything are kind of trained to come down and get fed by like the people. So like we're filming, all of a sudden like an elk just jumps behind, and you're like, $1 million shot right there.
Right.
Like, where else would we ever get that?
Yeah.
But just done with the right lighting, just walking through the woods. I mean, it's just so creepy and just done such
absolutely.
done in such a way. What genre of horror would you like to see make a comeback?
Really, like I said, the slasher. I think the slasher has been dead, and Scream's trying to hold it together, and it's not necessarily doing it. Yeah, Terrifier is back, but the good slasher, I think, is really what we need.
Do you think that involves more story, more psychological? But still including the slasher. You think audience have kind of grown more sophisticated to that kind of stuff? Or
if you do the slasher and you do it kind of like the original Friday the 13th is, you don't know who it is until the very end.
Yeah.
It's we're so used to seeing the slasher throughout the entire movie. That's what we got used to, is when they're going to pop up. But we need to do it more from their point of view or something like that. Like I said, or a found footage slasher.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be.
While the slasher is recording his kills.
Yeah, you know, I like the cloud idea. As soon as you said that, like, I'm like, oh my god, like a cloud leak, and you know, only certain people are seeing this, and then they have to try to figure out who the guy is,
Yeah.
or you know, yeah, like you could go so many ways with that, and just yeah, wow. So yeah, I'm telling you, we'll have to get a script going, man.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah, and you already know how I feel about Chicago. I'll come anytime, except not in the winter. Not in the winter.
No?
No.
It's
I'm Arizona boy, man. Like,
it's supposed to snow tomorrow.
Oh, I think it's the wind chill that freaks me out. Like I've dealt with snow before, but you hear about that Chicago wind, and I'm thinking like, and I seen Lake Michigan freeze mid wave one time. I'm like, yeah, no. 65, and I'm like, do you have a jacket?
Awesome.
Yeah, no, yeah. So, yeah, but definitely, man. Please let us know where we can find you at.
Yes. If you want to know everything about me, you can follow me on all social media at PodOutAtNight. That is.
I thought you were going to give like your address out. You're like, if you want to know everything about me, it's
everything about me. I'm on the corner from 5 to 7 every night now. No, so follow us on all social media at PodOutAtNight. That will link to our podcast, what we do. It's also our YouTube channel where we do Conversations in the Void, where we have conversations with people in the horror world.
Nice.
And yeah, and look out for Horror-Raven, RAVIN, because we're raving about horror.
That's awesome. I love it. So you were saying that, so last year you got about 300 episodes in? Is that you were saying? So how do you, I have a few different podcasts I do. One's called the It's For Somewhere 20 podcast. It's different days. We do themes and stuff, paranormal, whatever.
Yeah.
So we're up to 500 episodes on that. And I was thinking back, I'm like, man, because it's only been a couple years, and you kind of look back, and you're, what are some of the things that you've learned from day one to where you're at right now? Like something you did on day one that you were just like, you know, you look back, you're like.
Not being prepared for interviews was a huge thing. And realistically, editing, like, you know, I had all these great ideas for all these different shows with retro video gaming, with nerd stuff, with new horror games, stuff like that. I overloaded myself, quite honestly. I got burnt out really fast. And it was just kind of trying to find that, you know, day job, you know, fun podcast stuff, family time, and kind of balancing out. So I really took out about 2 months from every other channel except the main podcast this year, just to refocus and do more horror movies and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's a work-life balance pretty much, right? Yeah, especially when you're working a real job, and then you got to come home and do this, and then you got family, like you said. There's not enough hours in the day sometimes.
No.
Like, there's been days where I come home, and even today I was taking a little nap right before we went on, and I looked, I'm like, 15 minutes. Oh man. And I got my drink, and then I'm like, pop my head in, I'm like, oh, he's already on. All right, let's do it. But then once you start talking, it's like, you know, it's a whole different, like, you're like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, I'm so happy I got to meet you. Got to talk horror today. Oh, guys, and all the links will be down in the description below. So all you got to do is click away. And do that. Yeah, I definitely want to have you back on, talk some more horror.
Absolutely.
Actually, in April, we're doing another horror icon tournament. We do big giveaway. We're giving away an Annabelle doll and some Conjuring autograph. So what it is the community votes. It's a triple A, NCAA tournament style, like March Madness. And we put all the horror icon killers, Jason, Freddy, and they all go and they vote. People vote. And then they'll move on to the next bracket, whoever wins that bracket. And we do one icon. Last year it was Jason. Jason won it all.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I do stuff like that. One of the shows I do on Thursdays for Distance Learning, we do the build where the guy builds Legos, we interview people, then we do brackets.
Nice.
So we did
I love brackets.
It's a great time. And just hearing other people's ideas of it and the upsets that you get in them, I think it's great.
So yeah, I'll end it on this. I just want to see your reaction, and you could either give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down. So my theory on Friday the 13th is that Mama Voorhees is a pot farmer. and those meddling kids keep getting from the camp, keep getting into her stash. So she sends her son with a little mental issues to go handle it, and he breaks out the machete and he starts killing everyone all over pot. So Jason is a pot farmer. What do you think?
I like it.
All
I
right.
like it.
Trademark Daily Dank, guys. Don't be stealing my idea. No. Oh, so I appreciate you. Yeah, definitely, guys, go check him out. Graveyard, just out all the podcasts. I'm excited, guys. I'm going to be over there checking out. I watched some earlier today. They're super interesting. I love the conversations, guys. Filmmakers, like he said, special effects artists. They get down and anything you want to know about horror, they got you covered over there, guys. So make sure you're giving them a like and some love. And then, yeah, give them a shout out. Let them know the Daily Dank sent you, guys. Tell them Marge sent you. All right. All right, guys. We'll be back right after this. All right, guys. Are we still rolling here? All right, guys. That was it. That was the Elevated Perspective Podcast. What a great one. That's pretty awesome, guys. I had a great time doing it. Make sure you're sending them some love. PodOutAtNight, guys. Thank you so much. That was a great one. I'm going to have them back on, guys. We got to talk more horror. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it, guys. Make sure you're hitting that like, subscribe, and share button. And check out the Elevated Perspective channel, guys. I'll have a link in the description, or I'll tell you about it later on. And also, check us out on Temu, guys. We're going to be throwing out affiliate links. So if you're buying some shit on Temu, click the link and maybe help us out a little bit. Anyway, guys, have a great rest of your day. We go, 4:20? We got an hour, guys, before we go back live again. We got a great one. I'm trying Burger King, the Philly cheesesteak melt. We're going to have a great day, guys. It's a great show. Politicians are making their way on the show. Wait till you see what we got in store, guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you at 4:20. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you're checking out thedailydank.com for all the things. You guys know what it is. We will see you on the next episode. Take care, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the It's 420 Somewhere podcast. Broadcasting worldwide and brought to you by thedailydank.com. Check out our merchandise and amazing content. And follow us on all our social media. Now, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
We'll see you guys.